The Sunshine State might be known for its white sandy beaches, abundant wildlife, amusement parks, and incredible seafood, but it also has a dark and intriguing history of organized crime, dating back to the early 20th century. From bootlegging during the Prohibition era to modern-day drug trafficking, the mob has played a significant role in shaping the criminal underworld of Florida. In this video, we'll take a closer look at the most notorious mobsters, their illicit empires, and the law enforcement efforts that have attempted to bring them to justice. Let's start with the Prohibition era, which lasted from 1920 to 1933. This period of time was a significant opportunity for organized crime, and had a massive impact on the state of Florida. With the ban on alcohol sales, bootlegging became a lucrative business, and the mob quickly moved in. In Florida, the biggest mob player was Al Capone, who established a vast network of speakeasies, bootlegging operations, and illegal liquor warehouses. Capone's criminal empire extended from Miami to New York, and he ruled the criminal underworld with an iron fist. The mob used the money from the illegal alcohol sales to fund their other criminal activities. They were able to use their connections with corrupt politicians and law enforcement officials to keep their illicit activities hidden from the public. However, there were still many violent clashes between the mob and law enforcement during this time, as they were determined to protect their illegal operations. During Prohibition, the mob became involved in other criminal activities, like gambling, prostitution, and drug trafficking. These activities flourished throughout this era, since the mob had the money and resources to expand its operations. This group used its power and influence to gain a foothold in the state, and they were able to control vast portions of Florida's economy. The Prohibition era also had a massive impact on the culture of Florida. The speakeasies and bootlegging operations provided a place for people to socialize, and the mob became a part of local folklore. The mob even influenced the music of the time, with many popular songs of that period being written about the illegal activities and lifestyle of the mob. In the 1940s, Florida entered the era of the Miami Mob, which lasted until the 1960s. The Miami Mob, also known as the Miami Mafia, is composed of various Italian American and Jewish criminal organizations, including the notorious La Cosa Nostra, also known as the Sicilian Mafia. After the repeal of Prohibition, the Miami Mob became a dominant force in organized crime. The city of Miami was a hub for drug trafficking, gambling, and prostitution, and the mob controlled much of the illicit activity. The Miami Mob was led by Meyer Lansky, a notorious gangster who was known as the mob's accountant. Lansky was a savvy businessman who invested in legitimate businesses while also controlling a vast criminal empire that extended from Florida to Las Vegas. The Miami Mob rose to prominence in the mid-20th century and quickly became one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the United States. This group has been tied to numerous high-profile cases and has operated in almost every major city in Florida. It's also been linked to several international crime syndicates, including the Italian-American Mafia, the Russian Mafia, and the Colombian drug cartels. The Miami Mob was well known for using violence and intimidation to maintain control of its criminal empire. The mob has been linked to a number of notorious murders and other violent crimes, including the assassination of former Colombian drug lord Pablo Escobar. The Miami Mob is also believed to have strong ties to the Cuban government and has been known to use Cuban exiles to carry out its criminal activities. The Miami Mob has had a long and varied history in Florida and is still active in the state today. They've been involved in several highly publicized incidents, including the murder of Miami Herald reporter Chauncey Bailey in 2007 and the arrest of several mobsters in 2008 for their alleged involvement in a massive money laundering operation. By the 1980s, the Miami Mob was losing power, and law enforcement was closing in. The FBI's Organized Crime Strike Force targeted the Miami Mob, and many of its leaders were arrested and convicted. The decline of the Miami Mob marked the end of an era, but organized crime continued to thrive in other parts of Florida. The Miami Mob's power and influence continued to decline in the late 1990s due to a combination of factors. One of the primary factors was the increasing influence of the Colombian drug cartels in the region, which began to take over the drug trafficking operations traditionally controlled by the Miami Mob. In addition, law enforcement agencies such as the FBI and DEA began to crack down on the mob's activities, leading to the arrest and conviction of several of its top members. The emergence of new technologies and the increased mobility of modern criminals made it more difficult for this group to maintain control over their traditional areas of influence. The decline of the Miami Mob was a significant setback for organized crime in South Florida, as the mob had been a major player in the region for decades. The mob's downfall marked the end of an era, with the region's criminal organizations losing their power and influence, and being replaced by more sophisticated and powerful criminal gangs. However, the Miami Mob's still seen in the media every now and again, and is believed to be behind the more recent rise in organized crime activity in Miami-Dade County, including the murder of Miami-Dade police officer Mario Gutierrez in 2011. Although this group is no longer the mighty empire it once was, organized crime continues to operate in South Florida, albeit in a much less powerful form. Before the downfall of the Miami mob, the Tampa mob entered the playing field in the 1960s. The earliest known organized crime activities in the area date back to the late 19th century, when gangs ran rum-running operations along the Gulf Coast. Over the years, these operations evolved into more sophisticated criminal organizations that engaged in activities ranging from gambling and prostitution to drug trafficking and loan sharking. By the late 20th century, the Tampa mob had become one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the United States. This group was a lesser-known but equally dangerous organization that operated in the Tampa Bay area. The Tampa mob was involved in a variety of criminal enterprises, including gambling, loan sharking, and drug trafficking. They're also known to be involved in extortion and bribery. This group is believed to have ties to other criminal organizations, both domestic and international. In addition, the Tampa mob is thought to have a strong influence on local politics, with some members reportedly having close ties to prominent local politicians. The Tampa mob was led by Santo Trafficante Jr., a legend in mob history who was one of the most powerful mobsters in the country. Rumor has it that he was tangled in a web of conspiracies to assassinate the US president during his time, John F. Kennedy, in addition to planning to murder the leader of revolutionary Cuba. However, he somehow never spent a night in an American jail. You could say he was someone you wouldn't want to mess with. In recent years, the Tampa mob has become increasingly involved in high-level drug trafficking, particularly in the US and Latin America. Additionally, this group is currently believed to be involved in smuggling and human trafficking. It has been linked to a number of high-profile cases, including the murders of several prominent figures in the Tampa area. Not to mention, this mob reportedly has close ties to major drug cartels, including the Sonora Cartel and the Gulf Cartel. Today, organized crime in Florida has evolved into more sophisticated criminal enterprises, most of which are run by Latin American drug cartels. Some say that when crime boss Santo Trafficante Jr. died in 1987 from a heart operation, the mob's infamous heyday died with him. Mobs throughout Florida still exist, but they operate in a much different manner than they did in the past. Law enforcement agencies in Florida continue to target organized crime. The fight against the mob is ongoing. The impact of the mob in Florida may be a fascinating topic, but it's a brutal chapter in the state's history. From Al Capone's bootlegging empire and the powerful Trafficante family to the decline of the Miami mob and the rise of Latin American cartels, the criminal underworld of Florida has been shaped by some of the most notorious mobsters in American history. Today, the fight against organized crime continues, but the legacy of the mob in Florida will always be a part of the state's history. That's all we've got for you today. Thanks so much for watching.